Hey everyone, it's December 28, 2014, and right now, part 2 of our most important stories of the year. This time following up last week's Apple with this week's tech. I'm joined by Serenity Caldwell, Peter Cohen, and Ali Kazmucha. Let's get right back into it. This is the iMore Show. Transitioning into general tech news, there was a couple things, several things actually that happened that were, they engulfed the entire tech community. And one was the rise of hacking. We saw an incredible amount of hacking this year. We had merchants being hacked, Target being hacked, Home Depot being hacked for credit card numbers. One of the reasons why Apple Pay is was such a good sell for vendors was because it makes everyone more secure. We also had celebrity hacks where private photos and other images were taken from their online accounts and blasted all over the internet. We had Sony hacking, where it looks like North Korea went in and stole a terabyte of information from Sony, and with the help of sensationalism, a lot of information, including social security numbers, private emails, and movies, all sorts of other stuff were made public. Peter, security is you're always at war with security. It is never enough. The hackers are always trying new things. There's always a gap between responses. But I think this finally maybe is a wake-up call.
Yeah, one of the things that concerns me is that gradually in bits and pieces, iOS and OS X are both getting a higher profile with hackers than they have before. And, we've been very comfortable and I think overly complacent in our position as Apple users to say, well, we're not going to get any malware on our machines. And it depends partly on how you define malware and partly on what you're doing, but I see customers come into our store all the time who have visited the wrong website and ended up with just a mess on their computers. So this is a very real problem for Mac users and in some cases iOS users as much as it is anybody. A lot of the iOS stuff that we've seen happen this past year actually involves more jailbroken devices than anything. And I think that that's kind of a perpetual problem, although it really influences or affects a fairly small minority of overall iOS users. Most people don't jailbreak their devices. And if you do, and if you're downloading pirated software, well, quite frankly, I think you get what you deserve.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a case. I think that there's problems in house reported, but I think that the awareness level, I think the awareness level is good for us. Like you said, we might have been a little bit complacent. Apple certainly does work really hard, especially on iOS, for security. But Ali, I mean, it goes way beyond that. How many people use a passcode? How many people use Touch ID? How many people use a password manager? How many people were even aware that putting stuff online always comes with some element of risk?
Yeah, and how many people are still using password 123 as their password? Or
Sony, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that great meme.
Using the, same password for multiple sites. At some point, it comes down to individual responsibility too. Protect your shit online, in real life, anything. Just protect your stuff. And I think that companies can only do so much. Apple can push Apple Pay. Banks can push whatever. And to be honest, in the U.S., our security and our measures with credit cards are way out of date, which is why banks are being forced to switch over to NFC and chip and pin and EMV or whatever it's called.
Chip and SIG, ugh.
Yeah, well, I mean, seriously, it's a combination. Banks and retailers have a responsibility to protect that client information, but individuals have a responsibility to protect their own information. So it goes hand in hand, and both have to do their part. And I think if both were doing their part, maybe we wouldn't have seen some of the issues that we had earlier, but I think that's kind of a precursor if, both parties don't step up and take responsibility for both sides of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
The only thing that gives me a little bit of tension in this is that Sony was hacked before. The PlayStation Network was hacked, and it doesn't look like they learned from it. And the statements that they made also indicated that they were unaware of this kind of thing. But their security was so bad. Like, it was worse than any dime store, 4-person LLC that I've seen that has, Basic Exchange installed. it was just terrible. But what was also terrible was that they got almost no support from their community. The MPAA was nowhere. Their fellow, I don't want to get all George Clooney here, but their fellow studios were nowhere. The community was nowhere, and the community is sort of what you need when these sorts of things happen.
Naturally, because they ran like cowards. No one wants to be the next one in Guardians of Peace's radar or Anonymous or whatever hacker group is going to come out next. This is the big problem, is that just like when you were in elementary school, the last thing that you want to do is attract the bully's attention. And whether you're talking about this or something that I hope we get to later, which is GamerGate, or anything else, there is a self-censoring aspect to all this, which is really disturbing. And that is, you don't want to raise the ire of that person who can do this to you. So that's why we haven't seen, a lot of outcry in Hollywood, at least a lot of public-facing outcry, except from a few people who, feel like they don't have anything to lose by saying otherwise.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with Peter. The big issue here is that I would be very shocked if the other members, the other big Hollywood studios, had vastly more secure measures for their online security than Sony. And as such, I think what they're like, their silence is not even so much, oh, we don't want to support Sony, as it is, why don't we all check our IT networks and get on fixing them?
It's like Monty Burns being in the back trying to close the screen door, right?
The door's open, man.
All right, so Peter mentioned GamerGate. We'll cover that too, because it has the same sort of element of bullying to it and the same sort of element of hysteria to it. GamerGate ostensibly is about ethics in journalism. Maybe there are a couple people still confused about their agenda who legitimately thought that was their belief. I don't believe any rational person can look upon their accomplishments to date and think that it's anything other than I don't even have the proper words in English to describe it. It was a couple of B-roll celebrities who I actually used to enjoy in their sci-fi shows when they still had them, who sort of incited a mob of people to go at the worst of humanity, the worst of, and I'm not talking about people. I'm not saying you're bad people. I'm saying that when humans get together, they can do horrible, horrible things, especially when we become the worst of all of us, the worst of the sum of our parts. And they just relentlessly harassed women in journalism, women in gaming, and anything ancillary that they could sort of fold into that. Peter, you mentioned it before. You've written quite a bit about it. I'd like to get everyone's opinion on it, but I again, this is a part that makes me. This is the downside of the internet.
Yeah, it really is the downside of the internet. I remember a number of years ago, I was covering something that was something related to the Mac market, and it involved a particular vendor who had a product that had, for whatever reason, stirred a great deal of controversy in the segment of the market that I was covering at that point. And he said to me, the most awesome thing about the internet is that everybody's put on a level playing field. And the worst thing when it comes to, sharing their opinion about things, and the worst thing about the internet is that everybody is on the same level when it comes to sharing their opinion about things. It's a double-edged sword. It's a classic double-edged sword. There's absolutely nothing wrong with voicing your opinion about ethics in game journalism or ethics in journalism or ethics in general. Ethics are a good thing, but the problem is that a very small percentage of the GamerGate audience, the people who are pro-GamerGate, have poisoned the message entirely with a really virulent, antisocial, sociopathic in some case, misogynistic message that is poisoning the rest of it, and has irrevocably poisoned the rest of it. And there are, unfortunately, outside of that small group, there is this halo group of people who are so anxious to protect the message of GamerGate at any cost that they're willing to decry or discredit any attempt to shine light on those people as stuff like false flags. Well, that's just, Brianna Wu trying to pretend that somebody outed her when she outed herself. That is crazy conspiracy theory bullshit that you hear on AM talk shows like Alex freaking Jones. If you are a rational person, you don't believe this stuff. But, there's a thin line sometimes between voicing your opinion and demonstrating to everybody that you're mentally freaking ill. That's the problem.
I think there's a
real GamerGate group.
I think there's a reason also that it hit gamers because this group, I mean, you could go after ethics in Washington. You could go after ethics in automobile journalism. You could go after ethics
in Hollywood
junkets.
So incredibly trivial. I mean, I wrote about games for 15 years. I wrote about games for 10 years for Macworld, and I wrote about games for about 5 years before that. And I have seen the entire gaming industry dissolve, or gaming journalism industry dissolve. You know, there are very few game publications anymore. There are very few reputable game publications, and the ones that are out there, the ones especially that are online, like GameIndustry.biz, for example, and Polygon, do a damn good job of what they're covering, and they don't deserve this shit from jerks who think that they're all in bed with game developers because game developers flash a little boob at them sometimes, or they go to events like E3 or whatever.
I want to talk a little bit about that because I think the origin of Gamergate and that whole controversy, I think it's interesting to me that the person they're talking about ethics of game journalism, and the first person that's outed is not the journalist who supposedly, you know, traded sexual favors for reviews, which was later proved to be false, but they went after the developer. They went after the developer and not the journalist.
Not only did they go after the developer, but who went after the developer? Who outed her, quote unquote, an ex-boyfriend with an axe to grind?
Yeah. So there's that. There's that side note. The other thing, the whole ethics, you know, again, ethics policies are fantastic, and I do think obviously, like, there's a reason why journalists in general have a rule about review units and you know, not accepting gifts from developers and things like that. And that is to protect, you know, the ethics and everything. The thing that makes me crazy is people assuming that you cannot talk or be in any way affiliate. Like, I can't, if I know Brianna Wu, I am suddenly insinuated and inclined to give her a good review. The developers that I know the best are the people who I give the harshest reviews to because I expect the best from them. Like, anybody who, it's one of those things where it's like the entire industry is so small, especially you're talking about, you know, gaming in particular has become so small because of so few publications. The Mac industry is very similar to Apple, the Apple coverage industry, the indie developers, you know, everybody knows everybody. Because you know what? If you want to write well about something, if you want to write well about an app, if you want to write well about a how-to, you do your research. And doing your research means talking to the developer. Does it mean saying, oh, developer, buy me a fancy lunch? No, that crosses a line. But it does mean getting to know the developer, getting to understand their aspirations and their motivations behind making the game, and, you know, because it creates a better, more well-rounded picture of what you're doing. Does that mean that...
And that can be applied to anything. I mean, should I not review an app that I beta tested for because I had contact with a developer? That's ridiculous. It all comes back to the fact that it is a small industry. People know each other. You have to. I mean, I want to be more informed and educated, and I also want a developer to release a product to consumers that can be the best it possibly can. And part of that, in my responsibility, is to make sure that they have honest feedback, and they know, you know, we like this, we don't like this. You're going to have that problem in any industry. I mean, you could apply that same thing. Okay, well, they knew each other prior to writing the reviews. Okay, well, I've known pretty much, you know, had contact with every developer I've ever written a review for because I want to give them feedback. So where is that line, you know? And I think that's the problem, is people have a difference of opinion on where that line should be.
Yeah, well, if you want to...
You know who I'm interested in having a conversation about journalistic ethics with? People who actually know about journalistic ethics, not gamers on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, I'm interested in having the conversation with other journalists. I'm interested in having the conversation with people who have a background in ethics. I'm interested in having a conversation about it with the people who run the newsrooms where these things are reported, and the editors who dole out these articles, and understanding what their ethics policy is and what exactly ethics in games journalism is. Because a lot of people who are complaining about ethics in games journalism don't have the slightest frigging idea what journalistic ethics are. They just don't. For them, It's just a battle cry. It's a battle cry. I don't like this person's opinion, so therefore I'm against their ethics. No, you're not. You don't even know what ethics means.
The biggest thing that I've seen from people recently is disclosure. Well, like, here's guys, my blanket disclosure. I talk to every developer whose app I'm going to write about because I want to know more about it. But that's like a blanket, that's every single app. It's not one app specifically over another one.
My worry here is that the discussion always ends up becoming about ethics, and we start talking about our ethics, and it has nothing to do with ethics. I think it has to do with the group of people who self-identified as a particular thing because they felt badly done by in a larger community, and they formed their own community, and that's magnificent. But the sad thing is that what usually happens when you form your own community is that it becomes subject to the same ills of the greater community that you left, so that people who are persecuted become persecutors, people who feel bullied become bullies, and we see it happening over and over again. And unfortunately, because of the internet, it's allowed to magnify, and because of anonymity, it's allowed to have no repercussions, and that's what lets it become these big things. This was about a lack of inclusivity in going back to inclusivity, another one of our big stories this year. This was about a lack of inclusivity in a community, and that has led to that community not knowing how to engage with anything beyond itself. And I truly believe that, and what we said before, that you cannot have inclusivity without including people of incredible diversity in the process. Not only does it make your information better, it makes your end results better. If 50% of the people involved in GamerGate were women, it would not have the agenda or the impact or the effect that it has right now. It is only because it has nothing to do with ethics in gaming. That is complete and utter bullshit. Anyone saying that should really take a deep, dark look at themselves, because it is about people treating other people poorly. Even if it were about ethics in game journalism, which it isn't, you would still be treating people poorly, and that would still not be okay. So I'm going to go back to the inclusivity thing for a minute, because I believe it's incredibly important. We're trying to do it, at Mobile Nations. We haven't gone far enough. We're going to keep trying to do it further. We want to have more, and diverse people's opinions on all the stuff we cover. But that has to be everywhere. Everyone has to be involved in the conversation, or the conversation is going to suck. And I am so tired of the conversation sucking.
I would 100% agree.
Yeah, I just honestly, what my goal from day one on the internet is to learn more and become more than I am as a human being. And I feel like having decent conversations with people where we can discuss our views and our thoughts without it devolving into flames, that is the kind of thing that I cherish. And there are places on the internet where that can happen. And I love hearing from people who have different opinions than I do. But I feel like unfortunately, the few people who are genuinely concerned about game journalism and ethics and all of that have gotten drowned out by the mass of insane people who are wandering around being like, what's great? You know how we can fix ethics in game journalism? Let's smear and out and terrorize women who happened to be developers. Not even journalists, developers. Let's make them scared for their lives, because that's a great, fantastic way to encourage conversation about ethics or about good policy.
No, their conversation would be exclusively towards the publishers and executive editors of the major game journals, and it would have nothing to do with any of the people they've targeted. Those people would just not be involved.
No, exactly.
Unless they happen to run those publications.
No, I'll be honest. Like, if you're listening out there and you have a genuine interest in ethics and games journalism, and it's not to you about like the leaders or whatever, if you seriously want to have a good discussion about that, there are other places you can go. You don't have to hang out in the hashtag GamerGate. You don't have to go to 8chan. There are places where you can have intelligent discussion with people who are willing to have intelligent discussion. This is not your place. Do not associate yourself with people who are women haters and who want to terrorize people. Not even women, who want to terrorize people. Don't do it. It's stupid.
Would take advantage of anonymity, basically.
Yes, exactly. You are better than this. If you truly want a discussion that exists, there's a place for it. Just don't.
Go look at the Go look at the auto journalists, please, because they're busy fighting over whether they should get free gifts along with their junkets. You have much better things to spend your ethical time on than game journalists.
Truth.
A couple to veer 180 degrees for a second. Our distinguished competition, to borrow an old Marvel Comics line, had an interesting year as well. Google got material design. For many years, Apple's had great design. They've moved into great functionality. Google had great functionality, not very good design. They spent a lot of time, a concerted effort. They rebuilt a lot of things, and now they have material design. They have, something that stretches across every screen that they make, from web to PC to Chromebook, if those are distinguishable, to mobile. It's very flat. It's got some nice shadows though, and it makes Android. I mean, Ali, you've got Android devices. It makes it look good.
Yeah. I have to confess, I have not updated any of my Android devices yet.
Oh, Phil Nicholson's gonna cry.
I know. Phil, cover your ears. Earmuffs. Yeah, but I have looked at a lot of the literature on that. I see screenshots posted all the time, and Android's kind of coming in their own in terms of design. It's come a long way from the first time I picked up an Android phone and just went, ugh, nope, set it back down. So I find a lot of the Android devices nowadays pretty usable, and even like HTC with Sense and some of the other interfaces have really grown leaps and bounds in just 12 months.
I remember the first time I reviewed the original HTC Dream. I think it was the whatever it was called on T-Mobile, the G1, and I opened it up and I launched the only game on it, Snakes or something, and it said press up to continue. And I tried swiping up on the screen. I tried pressing the arrow key. I tried using the joystick little thing. There was like 8 different ways to push up on that device, and none of them worked. And that was my early experience of Android. But year after year, it's gotten better and better. And it's still not my favorite, but right now I feel like I could use that as a daily phone with absolutely no problem, and that's amazing to me. As little as last year, I was at CES with Brian Klug from Anantech, and I was complaining that Gmail wouldn't scroll, and he came up and put it in developer mode, and the screen went bright red, which meant that every single list item was being redrawn 4 or 5 times, and that kills performance. And I know Google's engineers were pulling their hair out trying to get their own teams to adopt better practices, and now it looks like they've done it. They made as much of an effort as Apple made on functionality to get usability done. And I'm super happy because strong competition is better for everybody.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, Peter, Microsoft, that ancient institution, the original distinguished competition, got a new CEO, and it looks like a new, cloudier focus.
Yeah, Satya Nadella came in to replace Steve Ballmer and immediately started making some big changes at Microsoft. And we've seen some really interesting things that have trickled down just to the Apple side as well. For example, Office for iPad is available for free download now and doesn't need to be unlocked with Office 365 in order.
And it came out before the Windows version.
Ridiculous.
Sorry, Ali?
I said, which was ridiculous. The whole, you have to have a subscription to use. I'm glad that model went away.
They didn't charge $300 for it up front the way that they did on the desktop.
No, but just I feel like when you look at releasing an app like that, you have to look at your existing competition too. And for me, no matter how tied in I was to Office, if I didn't have a 365 subscription, which sneakily enough, you still need that for some of the advanced features that Office offers on the iPad.
Track changes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm still not a huge fan of Microsoft's subscription model on the iPad, but they put out some really nice software, and I just, we'll see. I'm
inclined to agree with that. I think that they're improving things in leaps and bounds. The thing that they've got to do, from my perspective, and I'm just going to advocate as a Mac user here, is get their act together with Office for the Mac.
Yes.
Because we haven't seen a major revision of Office in 4 years. Office 2011 was the last release that came out, and that came out in 2010. So Microsoft has really got to get its act together with regards to getting Mac Office on the same page as its Windows counterpart. And I realize that in terms of priorities, it's pretty far down the list. But it is what it is. And this fall, we've seen Microsoft make a big push against the MacBook Air, which is Apple's most popular laptop, probably Apple's most popular Mac model, period. by positioning the MacBook Air against the Surface Pro 3. And,
well, the Surface Pro 3 has got a USB port, Peter. How are you going to compete with that?
That's true. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Wow. So we'll see how well the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as the saying goes, and we won't know for a while how successful Microsoft's marketing efforts have been there. But I don't know. It's interesting. The Surface Pro 3, give them credit. By the time when the original Surfaces came out, I had played with them a bit and wasn't particularly impressed. But Microsoft has been improving the Surface experience iteratively with each new product, and the Surface Pro 3 is a surprisingly usable tablet. It's a good machine. I don't think it hits the same market segmentation that Apple does with the iPad. I think that it's probably a little more vertical, a little bit more aimed at business users specifically, but it's still a pretty powerful system.
I feel like it competes more with the iPad or with the MacBook than it would with an iPad. That's when I look at a Surface Pro, I don't know. I wouldn't think of that.
I wouldn't do either. Like, I think they got creamed when they went up against the iPad, and I think it makes no sense to go up against the MacBook Air. It makes a lot of sense to go up against other Windows laptop makers, but for political reasons, they can't do that. So I wish they would just advertise it on its own, just show people what an amazing in-between device it is.
Yeah. That would be
and try to build
strategy.
a new segment, but that would mean actually defining a market segment that the Surface can compete in. And let's face it, it's a lot easier and a lot more palatable for a lot of weak-spined middle managers who are making these decisions to say, you know what, we're just going to do attack ads instead because attack ads are more effective. This is my problem. This is my problem with all of this marketing about it, is that I don't mind that Apple is the dominant player. When a Surface Pro ad comes out, or when Samsung ad comes out aiming at the iPhone, I don't mind that they're making fun of these devices. The problem that I've got is that it's the only marketing I ever see on these products, and it's negative marketing. It's marketing saying, hey, look at us compared to our competition. I tell you what, don't do that. Do what Apple does, which is tell me about the product's features and benefits. Give me a reason to buy your shit.
I would love to see Surface ads where you have a guy using it on a plane. The guy next to him is struggling to open up a laptop, and he's just having a great time. And he goes from doing his Excel sheet to finally ship Excel for this goddamn Surface. He's doing his Excel sheet and then picks it up and watches a movie. Or a person is sketching on a park bench and then picks it up and goes into class. Just show what the advantages are of having a machine that can go from one to the other, that is, that could conceivably be the best of both. Don't just show me how it has a USB port like every other computer. So I have a couple other quick things for us to go through. Net neutrality. Net neutrality is so confusing to me. It's primarily an American issue the way it's phrased now, but it really is an international issue. And we've seen people like the Chancellor of Germany come out against net neutrality, which is stupefying to me. We've seen the Canadian government try to pass, admittedly, American Hollywood-backed laws that would greatly restrict our freedom of the internet. So far, they have not passed. We've seen SOPA get defeated in the U.S. We've seen, thanks to the Sony leaks, we've seen how Sony and the MPA is targeting Google in effect to stop various elements of net neutrality. But we've also seen the President of the United States, after appointing someone from the cable industry who was not pro net neutrality, come out for net neutrality. I'm a Quebecer. I am used to our government splitting on everything so that nothing ever happens. But net neutrality seems like one of those things where no country can get in the middle of it on either side and not do anything faster. And it's just, as someone who wants an open internet, it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, net neutrality has just become so convoluted, as you were saying, Rene, to the point where I feel like I have to re-explain what's going on to my parents every time I see them, because it's so complicated. Even the net neutrality, it's like, okay, well, and then there's some net neutrality proposals are more equal than others. Like, I feel like I'm an Animal Farm right now, where the base level seems uncomplicated. The internet should be regulated from creeps, but not speed regulated. People shouldn't be able to, companies shouldn't be able to pay more to have premium channels, because that's going to get us into cable television all over again. It'll be crazy. At the base level, that doesn't seem that complicated, and yet people are trying to make it so complicated. People are trying to champion capitalism and oh well, it'll be better for you because you can get faster speeds for certain things like Netflix. But on the other hand, you have the incredible danger hole that regulating the internet could turn into, and the fact that, if you pass a law like this, you have the potential to restrict certain websites unless you pay extra money, and I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way.
We're going to take a quick break so I can tell you about lynda.com. And here's the thing. I want you to kickstart your new year. I want you to challenge yourself. I want you to learn something new. And we're going to help you do that because we've arranged for a free 10-day, not 7-day, 10-day trial for lynda.com. Now, lynda.com is used by millions of people around the world and has over 3,000 courses on topics like web development, photography, visual design, and business, as well as things like learning Excel, learning WordPress, learning Photoshop. All their courses are taught by experts, and new courses are added to the site every week. Whether you want to set new financial goals, find work-life balance, invest in a new hobby, ask your boss for a raise, find a new job, or improve your current job skills in 2015, lynda.com has something for everyone. So what do you get in this free 10-day trial? You sign up, you get an unlimited access to every single course on lynda.com. You can literally feed your brain as much as it can eat. You get access to view tutorials on tablets and iPhones and Android devices, and you can access the new courses when they're added during that week. Some of the courses they have available right now are iOS 8, iPhone and iPad essential training, setting up your mobile office to work from anywhere, and speeding up and maintaining your Mac. I've been looking over the new courses, all of them look phenomenal. I've said before, I've been trying to learn Logic Pro. It's been going really slow. But, I've been taking a look at other stuff too. I looked a little bit at the WordPress stuff the other day. I had just a question I was trying to help a friend with, and I couldn't find the answer. So, take a look at lynda.com. And that's the thing. You can have a specific goal, or you can just use it to help solve problems when and if they come up. Look at it as almost, private training tutorials for whenever you need them. So again, do something good for yourself in 2015. Sign up for a free 10-day trial of lynda.com. All you have to do is visit lynda.com/iMore. Go ahead, challenge yourself, learn something new in 2015. Thank you so much, Lynda. Yeah, I don't know what will be done about it. I hope that we continue to fight the good fight. It does bring me nicely into our second sort of story, Peter. This is something that you've been writing about. It's that special magenta snowflake that is sort of caught in between because T-Mobile wants to be the disruptive influence and it's done a lot of really interesting things in the carrier space. But at the same time, as much as they want to be the people's champ, they can't be the net neutrality champ because that's counter to their interests. But as a CEO, John Legere is just so damn interesting to watch.
Yeah, John Legere is a loose cannon for a telecom CEO. He's a
special magenta snowflake.
He is a very special magenta snowflake. You never see him in a suit and tie. You always see him in a pair of jeans and a magenta T-shirt with the T-Mobile logo on it. He's got long hair. He drops F-bombs during press conferences. He is endlessly entertaining. He's quite a personality. He does things like crash the Macklemore concert at CES, which was hosted by it was a private party hosted by AT&T, just to get under AT&T's skin. That sort of stuff. He's a very interesting guy. As far as T-Mobile and other companies of its ilk, it's really interesting to see how they're taking the net neutrality issue more directly to their customers and saying, look, these are the sort of things that we can do that run counter to the principles of net neutrality but benefit you as a customer. And I have to say that in some cases, I'm on their side with it. Things like offering, and they will tell you straight up, this doesn't run counter to net neutrality. This isn't what net neutrality is all about. From their perspective, net neutrality is a very specific thing, but bear with me here for a minute. They have this policy on T-Mobile of not charging you if you use one of their blessed, if you will, streaming internet music providers. So, for example, I listen to iTunes Radio. iTunes Radio is on the list. So none of the data that I use when I'm listening to iTunes Radio on my phone, when I'm away from Wi-Fi, I get charged for. It's free, which means that I stay under my cap, thankfully, because that data streaming is not counting towards what data I'm actually using on my phone. Some people have said, well, that runs counter to net neutrality because you're giving a benefit to some data where others don't get the benefit. And the service providers are quick to say, look, what this is really about is prioritizing the delivery of some data over others, making making you pay a premium to get access, or making somebody else pay the premium to get access for some data over another. It gets very muddied, and it's become commercialized very quickly, and that's why I think, Rene, you're seeing such a disparity happen here in the U.S. between people who want to see net neutrality at any cost versus corporations, lobbyists, and others who are saying, well, wait a minute, this can offer some end-user benefit that we have to take into account here, and we really shouldn't discount it out of hand.
No, I agree completely. I think that's sort of the underlying tone of a lot of our stories this year, which is disruption, and it brings me to one of our – we have only very few left, but logistical disruption. And whether you're talking about Uber, which, I was using to get around in San Francisco almost completely without having to rent a car last time I was there, to things like drones, which, people are testing now, and the law is trying to figure out what's good and bad about those. Google had a big self-driving car announcement either today or yesterday. And it's doing things at a scale and in a way that was never possible without the internet and without the ability to control things or to communicate with things. And it's super interesting. I don't always agree with how the companies are doing things. I think Uber's done some disgusting things over time, and I'm nervous about some of the ways that drones might be used or misused. And I don't know how a self-driving car is going to regulate when an accident starts to happen, and it's got to make decisions about whose lives are most important, between accelerating or stopping or swerving or whatnot. But these things are happening. The future is always scary. And the only difference is it seems like it's coming really fast now.
Yeah, I actually read a really interesting article, a comic article on Medium recently about the sharing economy. And how that's kind of, it may be disrupting our traditional services like taxi cabs, et cetera, but it's also actively disrupting class systems, surprise, and people able to get jobs. The argument from that from the article was that by having sort of middle class people taking second or third jobs doing things like Lyft or Uber or Airbnb, it's actually sort of funneling down and winnowing down the amount of jobs that are available for people who would traditionally have service class industry jobs, thereby making the whole sharing economy thing far less old tribe friendly as it is positioned to be. Oh, the sharing economy, we're returning to our roots, we're disrupting the old industry, and we're becoming more neighborly again. And then in actuality, well, only if you make above a certain amount of money, because otherwise you're kind of screwing people out of jobs. So that was a very interesting article, and I thought that was really, really strange take on or not strange, but really intriguing take on disruption.
I think it's absolutely genius, and I think it's similar to what we're seeing in media now too, where we have companies like Vox and we have companies like BuzzFeed and companies like Vice, which are becoming as much platforms as they are media outlets. What we see on the screen, especially in BuzzFeed's case, is determined way more by algorithms based on social sharing than it is about human curation and editorial anymore. And we're seeing a lot of that. Usually the old complaint was sensationalism, and I believe that this year has been sensationalized perhaps more than any other, simply because this was the next year on the chronology, and 2015 will be even more sensational. But
the most sensationalist ever. 20 reasons why.
One strange trick on how to make your year more sensational. Absolutely. But we've heard about how they'll actually recreate articles on the fly based on how people are sharing them and things. And you used to say that when you published a magazine, it was dead. But the web, as much as it was dynamic, we would make corrections, fix typos. But now the content itself is shifting and changing to try to appeal to more of us. And when I say appeal, I mean that old joke is that everyone, in the old days of the Nielsen journals, everyone would really watch soap operas, but they'd write down that they watched PBS. But because of Facebook and Twitter and all these things, they know what we're actually watching. And it turns out we really are watching those celebrity gossip stories, and we are watching scary security headlines. We're watching the things that we say out loud we don't want, that we criticize, that we wish weren't the case. Those are the things that we're soaking up, that we can't get enough of. And I don't know where it's going to go, but Peter, you've been working in this industry for a super long time. It is no longer what it once was.
No, it really isn't. And, there's a lot of talk about how we chase page views and stuff like that. And In some cases, that's perfectly legitimate and that's perfectly acceptable. I have to say that I get a little bit tweaked when somebody will complain to us about how easily we were bought for a good review of something or what have you, or how we're clickbaiting. That's always my favorite, that we clickbait our headlines because we make them interesting to read. That's not what clickbait is. It frustrates me that I think that there's a distortion of perspective as well. At the end of the day, though, it has to evolve. And we're going to give people what they want to read within the boundaries of what our mission is to do. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with not only trying to answer the need for what people want, but also trying to uplift them and trying to give them a perspective that maybe they genuinely hadn't heard before. To that end, there's room at the table for a lot of different viewpoints, and I don't necessarily think that any one media company that's working now, whether you're talking about us or what the folks over at Gawker are doing, or the sort of the traditional media like the New York Times, I don't think there's one answer that's all encompassing that's going to solve everybody's problems and make everyone happy at the same time.
You were so bought off by Dodge memes.
It's true. What can I tell you? I like dogs. That's why I am friends with the Alley, despite her antipathy towards raisins
and cats.
No, you gotta balance it somehow. No, I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Trinity, you come from traditional publications as well, and these certainly aren't that.
Yeah, traditional. Well, it's strange to me because my first experience was with Macworld was a magazine, but it was also a web publication, and I worked primarily on kind of adapting Macworld's content for the web. So I got to see firsthand, experimenting with the idea of SEO and all of that stuff. But it really, I don't know, the whole concept of a machine can curate your feed and your thoughts better than a human can. I'm still a little skeptical by that, and I love robotics and I love the idea of artificial intelligence and everything else. But as smart as BuzzFeed is, and I do think like what they're doing is, manipulative probably, but incredible, very, very smart. There's still something to be said about people behind the screens, right? Where things that are not written for native advertising, or not written for to try and clickbait, etc. But are written well and have a descriptive headline that yes pulls in your Google traffic, pulls in your social traffic, but they're articles that you might actually want to read and might actually want to pay attention to. Which is, again, not to say that BuzzFeed isn't doing that, because I've found some really enjoyable stuff on their site. But it's two different ways of approaching the same end result. Where BuzzFeed is trying, there are a lot of computer generated algorithms to try and take the onus off of their writers, to allow their writers to write the content and allow the computer to kind of make the special sauce to get it to the people that they want to see this information. Whereas, Holder Media tends to put all of that on the writers as well as the actual writing itself of the article.
Well, the interesting thing is when we were talking about streaming services before, when we were talking about Apple specifically, we were talking about Beats Music Service.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I think we all agree that Beats is great is because it actually has human curated playlists. And that was one of the reasons why Apple wanted to acquire Beats to begin with, according to Tim Cook. Cook said that this is one of the things that Beats did better than anyone else. So the humanity behind the stories that you read is something that I think is still incredibly important, no matter what direction the media business moves in terms of whether it's the sort of BuzzFeed model or the sort of stuff that we're doing. There's always got to be people behind the screen that ultimately that's where the buck stops. That's where the decisions are made on what gets written and how it gets written.
Yeah, well, as human beings, we crave, we crave a certain amount of interaction and a certain amount of connection. And if what you're reading is just written by a robot, right? If like years from now in the future, we have magazines that are just written by robots, sort of interpreting the day's news, it's going to be flat. Even the most peppy robot doesn't, currently can't create the same sort of feeling as from reading a personable human being. And it's nice to, even if it's not true, to believe that there's someone there on the other end who there's an opinion behind there. There's a story behind there that's not just flat, straight news writing.
So, which is interesting because the last thing I had written down was the rise of sort of privacy, the rise of anonymity, but not in the same, mostly in terms of direct communications, things like Secret, things like Yik Yak, things like, I forget the name of Mark Cuban's app, but Ali, you wrote about some of them, the secure and private messaging services. To me, they sort of came and then fell flat.
Yeah. I think some of them, they have like little niche crowds, it seems. For people that maybe aren't the Snapchatters of the world, which is not secure to begin with. But anyway, I've never really used any of them extensively. I guess I'm not that important. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really seen too much about them, and I don't really know too many people that use them extensively.
I turned off Secret because it was just filled with things that I either couldn't believe or didn't want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Secret's audience and the private messaging audiences is slightly different than it's a different crowd, right? Where I do think that there's an audience for it, but I don't necessarily it's not an audience that I think it's not a circle that I travel in, and as such I can't quite see the appeal of it. Maybe I'm just getting old. But
I think it's true because Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Line, all these things became tremendously big services, and they were mostly they're person-to-person services. They're not designed to be anonymous, encrypted, or services. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Secret has not exploded by any measure that I can see. Yik Yak and all of these services are interesting, but they seem to have stayed in a niche. It to your point earlier, Ren, I don't think it satisfies. I think some people like it because it's it's sort of a perverse voyeurism. Or they have specific reasons, but it doesn't connect us the way that humans want to be connected, and maybe that's why it hasn't taken off.
Yeah, I think there's a barrier there. There's still, maybe it fills our gossip hole, our gossip, our need for gossip. But I think of the original, in my opinion, the original version of this, which is Post Secret way back in the day. Their little blog, which I think has now turned into a variety of different things. It's like we do enjoy reading salacious details about people's lives, whether or not they're anonymous or not. It's unfortunately something that's a little bit hardwired into everybody. It's just a matter of what kind of information are you really looking to pick up on, and is this really enriching your life to know about someone's drinking habits or about some random thing with their parents, or maybe it's just a venting space. Maybe it's not, for some people it's not about the reading, but the venting, the ability to just shout into the void and know that your message is out there and might be seen by somebody that you might want to see it, but otherwise is just floating free-formed into the wind.
I think that's very true. So we're going to finish up now. I'm going to go around the room quickly. Ali, how was 2014 for you? What did you think about the year in tech?
Well, I always say didn't kill me, so came close. I tried.
Yay!
Tried. But
iOS 9.
I'm very excited for. Don't say that. I'm really excited for 2015, mainly for apps, and to see how developers take advantage of some of the stuff Apple opened up to them. I think it's going to be a year of software more than anything. This year pretty much already was. So I think 2014 was a good year. I think we saw Apple take a lot of approaches and open up a lot of things that we'd never would have thought of previously. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in 2015, and I would like a Photos app for my Mac that works with iCloud Photo Library, please.
Word.
Peter, what about you?
It was an interesting foundational year for both iOS 8 and OS 10, I think. The The release of iOS 8 in Yosemite marked this convergence that many of us had been predicting for years, but happened in a way that I don't think any of us were really expecting. We'd heard a lot about the iOSification of the Mac and how inevitably they were going to move towards one being or one operating system. That isn't happening. That hasn't happened, and that I don't think won't happen. But Apple's shown. Yeah, exactly. Apple's shown the way that both of these can coexist and can come out better the other side. So from that perspective, very interesting. 2015 holds a lot of promise, especially on the Mac because of new innovations that we're going to see from Intel. So I'm excited about what the future holds.
Ren?
Yeah, I'm with Peter. 2014 was the year of promise and the year of teasing. We've got a lot of fantastic tools that were kind of dumped into developers' laps starting in June. We've got the Apple Watch to look forward to early next spring. We've got the Photos app and hopefully a secure version of iCloud Photo Library to look forward to in 2015. There's a lot of promise set up by both Apple and competing industry giants in this space, and I'm waiting to see it deliver. I'm waiting to see how it all unfolds. But I think this was one of my favorite years covering tech, and certainly had some of the best Apple events in quite some time.
I'm going to agree with all of you. I think 2013, especially with iOS 7, it really started things moving. It started creating something new, and 2014 just built on it. It brought the redesign for Yosemite. It brought the new functionality for iOS. It brought new things like the tease of the Apple Watch and of Apple Pay and of all these new places that Apple's going. It showed the integration theme, and it really paid off on Tim Cook's gamble of replacing Scott Forstall with Craig Federighi. And in otherwise organizing the company to be more harmonious and to actually have, one engineering product manager for a feature and not just for an operating system or the feature on an operating system. I think all of that paid off greatly. I think there are challenges. I hope you can do the same thing with the App Store. He's shown like he's doing it with the Apple retail store and online store, so let's just keep moving that out. And I love that Apple is pushing for diversity and for, and for civility and for humanity and for energy efficiency and for all these causes that they can actually put their fame and their muscle behind. And I think in technology in general, it was an incredibly sad year in many ways, but it was also an illuminating year. I learned so much about how our privacy and security is at risk and just how poorly people can treat each other. And those are horrible things, but it's made me much more educated, and it's made me take my privacy and my security much more seriously. And it's made me want to help, if I can, all the people who are subject to that kind of abuse and harassment to make a more inclusive and a more humane world. And I think, the only way I can look at it is as a gift. And I think it's great that this technology, privacy is so important. All these ideas are so important that we're having these discussions. I think, as terrible as the reasons for some of them are, is incredibly important, and I'm hugely thankful for that. And of course, I'm thankful for the awesome, wonderful team we assembled on iMore this year. You guys all rock.
Bigger and better in 2015.
So, Ali, if people want to see all your great works and find you on the social networks over the holidays, where can they go?
I am at imore.com every day, minus the next couple weeks. I will be on vacation.
I know.
We'll see how Rene handles that.
I'll be at CES. I'm gonna. You're gonna have to come bail me out.
It's okay.
CES. Oh, CES.
We'll breathe.
I am at iMuggle on all of the things: Twitter, Instagram, all of the social things, pretty much.
All right, Peter. What about you?
On iMore and also on the social things at Flarg. FLARGH.
Ren?
I am at imore.com and on all of the social things at Saturn.
All right, and you might be doing some podcasts over the holidays, or is there anything coming your way?
That's true. I believe that keep your eyes peeled if you're a fan of The Incomparable for something special in a few days. I'm sure we will probably also do a podcast on the Doctor Who Christmas special. I hear there might be some crazy stuff. Just keep your eyes on Twitter.
They're all going to go.
Things might be afoot.
They're going to go caroling at Syracuse's house just to see how he handles it.
Yes, we're going to do a musical caroling episode. You have been warned.
On roller skates.
Nice.
Yep. I did bring them.
You can find all of us at iMore. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. I want to thank everyone, every reader, every listener, every viewer for a fantastic year. You are unmatched as an awesome community. You make us all so much better, and we really appreciate you. Have happy holidays in whatever method you choose to celebrate or not celebrate them. Just to have a wonderful, wonderful new year. And we will see you back at, we'll next be back at CES 2015. Talk to you all soon.
Woo!
See you next year.
Bye, guys.
And I want to once again thank lynda.com. I want to challenge you to challenge yourself in 2015. Sign up to lynda.com. Get a free 10-day trial. That's lynda.com/iMore. Go there, sign up, free. 10 days, you can learn something remarkable. Thanks, Linda.